My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags.
So I don't understand. So you're from Texas. You grew up in Texas. Texas is changing really fast. It's dirty, for one thing, I noticed, because physically dirty, garbage on the side of the road. I never have seen that in Texas before. So your governor could have stopped that. He commands the Texas National Guard, and he didn't. And I feel like that makes him a traitor to the country, but what am I missing?
Well, I mean, Governor Abbott is, on a scale of 1 to 10, the best kind of Republican governor is a 10, and the worst is, say, a 1. And like Illinois, it's a so-called Republican, that's really a Democrat. I would put Greg Abbott as about a 5. The state is overwhelmed. There isn't really a state mechanism. It's federal to kick people back and deport them. So they have put up barbed wire. They have tried to stop people. They have tried, but then they have to hand them over to the feds who release them.
But why not just say the feds are committing a crime? They're committing a crime. This is not allowed under laws passed by the Congress. In a democracy, the Congress passes laws. And so you've got criminals running the country. The Biden administration is criminal, which is true. And we're not playing along. And like, if you don't like it, come do something about it. Meanwhile, every able-bodied man.
Hello, welcome to episode 13 of Behind Enemy Lines with Terry Newsom and Paul Drabick. The title of today's show is called A Law a Day Will Keep the Freedom Away. We are going to be discussing the 34 pages of laws that will take effect in Illinois come January 1st, 2024, and how the state of Illinois is becoming a communist state pretty quickly. Terry is on assignment at America Fest, so we'll hear from him in just a second. He's on location. He's just going to say hi and tell us what he's up to. But we are going to be discussing the crime in Illinois that's rising, the immigrant crisis, and the centralization versus decentralization movement. We're going to play some videos for you and show you some articles about how things are getting out of control. So without further ado, let's bring Terry on to talk about what he's up to on assignment out there at America Fest with all these great Patriot news networks and people like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and everything. So, hey, what's going on, Terry? Good to see you,
Paul,
brother.
how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. So why don't you give us a little bit?
It's nice to be out of the shithole Chicago, I guess, or Illinois. So the weather's nice out here.
Free state,
and I'm very excited about what's going to go on in the next week with meeting all kinds of patriots, big shots from all over the country, and It's going to be an exciting event.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Terry was just on with Ann Vandersteel, and he did a great job on there. He is now a guest host with America's Mom, Sharona Bishop. And he's getting a lot of traction. I mean, his Twitter account blew up after his recent interview with Ann Vandersteel. So just want to remind everybody to please like, subscribe, and share so we can get our message out. So, Terry, who all are you going to be talking to out there?
Make sure you follow us on Getter and Rumble, because we're getting a lot of pushback from Facebook, as you would expect. I think what you're going to hear from Paul today is, we're going to focus on other things besides the politics of what we're all facing locally, right? We do have to respond from, time to time with some of the crazy stuff that's coming out of these nuts. But with that said, we're going to focus on some of the things that are going on, in the state, nationally, positive things as well. And we're going to add a thought of the day going forward. So we'll be included that into the format. And one thing that I was thinking about on the plane on the way over here, it's a long thought of the day. So in the western suburbs where we live, we're not really being impacted like the illegal immigration. I think Paul's going to talk about that later today on the show. And our buddy Devin Jones, who was interviewed with Ben, and the impact on the minority communities, the African American communities, Hispanic, Chinese, all in the minority neighborhoods. If you think about it, they're busing all these illegal immigrants into a lot of the blue states, right? The sanctuary cities, and they're pumping them in, and the community is in an uproar. But for some reason, does anyone wonder why the politicians aren't in a huge uproar? And if they are, it's kind of like soft tone. Well, think about what happens. Here's the thought of the day. What happens at every election? I'm sorry, every time we have a census, right? Every census, they count people, legal or illegal, thanks to the Democrats. So what happens after the census? Then there's an opportunity for them to have a appropriation of additional congressmen or representatives. So the blue states are going to be flooded with these illegal immigrants, and they're going to have more power. So even if they're not in your backyard in Downers Grove or nice suburbs and stuff, we're going to be affected. We're going to be affected in a big way. And the Democrats they're going to slip in and get way more control by counting these people that shouldn't even be in our country. Right? And they're going to allocate more political power to all these different blue cities throughout the country. And it's going to be overwhelming for us. So I just wanted you to think about that and how it's going to affect us, because even if they're not in your backyard, it's going to affect us. It's going to affect us in a big, big, big way. So that's my thought of the day, Paul. I don't know if anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, no,
because I know you're going to be covering a lot of this impacts of illegal immigration. Well, one other thing, sorry, is that the African American and Hispanic communities are in an uproar. And probably many of you have seen them on Fox News saying, we're ready to vote Republican. We're ready to vote for Trump, right? So it's up to the Illinois GOP and the RNC to get off their asses and go out to the community. And Paul and I will be doing some of that. I'm working with Devin and some other folks as well. Tyrone Mohammed, Pastor Laurie, he's out there. He interviewed this week with Bannon's show. And we have to go out and embrace them. The DNC is going to have their convention here. And I don't think it's going to go as well as they expected. I hope it's not like it was in the late 60s, because that was really crazy.
Hey, Terry,
I don't think it's going to be the shining star that BJ Prickster thinks it was going to be.
Terry, why don't they have the DNC convention in that warehouse where they're housing 3,000 illegal immigrants? That's their new constituency, right? So I don't see why they shouldn't do that.
They're going to be working the concessions.
No, I agree with everything you just said. And I think the thrust of it is, and we've talked about this, and you said how I'm going to cover some stuff that's going on in Illinois, the laws and everything, and what we can do to fight against it. But I think the point here is we've been talking about fighting the local thing a lot, and we want to say, we got a bigger picture, and we also want to show that we're not afraid, number one, to speak out against what's going on, but also, like you just talked about, we're also not afraid to reach out to other communities, like the African American community in Chicago, and say, we want to work with you. And I know you've been working with some of those people to try to get some events going so that we can say, hey, there's a way out of this. It isn't hopeless. Like, all we have to do is oppose it. And that's just not what's going on right now with the current Republican Party in Illinois. So
So thanks for sneaking me in before the show. Have a good show, and
awesome.
I'll be watching. And I'll make a lot more contacts for us. So you're going to see us pop up this next week on 12 different national shows. So
send us some clips.
Hang on.
Yep. Sounds good. Hey, good luck out there, brother. Good talking to you.
All right. See you, man. See you guys. See you, Jason.
So I don't understand. So you're from Texas. You grew up in Texas. Your family's been there all the time.
Pause that bad
Texas
boy.
is.
All right, cool. All right, well, it's good to hear from Terry. Terry's doing some yeoman's work out there. He's spreading the word. He's getting involved. He's expanding our reach by talking to outlets like Newsmax, OANN, RSBN, people that are involved with Steve Bannon, like Ben Bergquam, and he's talking to Ann Vandersteel, all these people. So the beginning clip you saw was Alex Jones. I'm sure a lot of people are aware that Alex Jones is back on Twitter. He's got a huge reach, and a lot of people think he's a conspiracy theorist, but he says a lot of things that are true. And I think he does have a pretty good read for the political landscape. And the important thing that he mentioned is the Republicans from 10 to 1, if 10 was the best Republican governor and 1 was the worst. And he likened it to Illinois Republicans saying that they were essentially Democrats. I totally agree with him. And I think it's not a political thing, right? The political thing is the verbal warfare thing, and people get hung up on that. No, they don't like this person because of the way they talk, like Trump, or you hear a lot of that about Matt Gaetz. What is important is the policy, right? We get hung up on Team Red. It's like, I don't care about that. I am a believer in conservative values, and what I am seeing is that Republicans aren't espousing conservative values, right? The Constitution, freedom. The Democrats are about our democracy. They say that all the time. Well, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, a representative government. And what we have right now, our problem is that representative government no longer represents what it was built to represent, which is the people. It now represents special interest and the interest of the politicians and bureaucracy. So we don't want a democracy, which is 51%, which is mob rule, which is what the Democrats want. They want communism. They want power. They want to partner with corporations and special interests to create 34 pages of laws like in Illinois, and just legislate us into tyranny and into slavery. And that's essentially what communism is. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that stuff today. So in our first segment, we're going to go over the crime problem in Illinois. Right, Illinois implemented the SafeT Act late in this year in 2023. I believe it was in September, after a lot of fighting and appeals to the Illinois Supreme Court, because it is insane. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and review it, and then give a couple stories about how it's already impacting our local communities here in Illinois, particularly around where we live in Downers Grove. So, Jason, can you bring up that Illinois policy article, the first one for segment 1, and we'll just go over the SafeT Act real quick. I don't want to, go into it too much, but we'll... if you want to scroll down to police reforms, and we'll read some of that to you. There we go. Okay, so the SafeT Act implements several reforms, how policing is done in the state and how police officers are held accountable for misconduct. The law restricts the ability of police officers to negotiate residency requirements, cities over 100,000 people, gives the Illinois Attorney General additional authority, go figure, to investigate civil rights violations committed by police officers, allows anonymous complaints against officers, and eliminates the requirement to sign a sworn affidavit. So they're attacking the police and make sure that the police do exactly what they're doing, what the bureaucrats and the politicians want them to do, essentially politicizing the police in Illinois. Requires a retention of misconduct records and requires increased reporting, crime statistics, and use of force information by police departments. Adds several restrictions to what constitutes a police officer's justified use of force, including banning chokeholds, clarifications on when deadly force is justified, and execution of search warrants. And just a point on that, when police officers are out in the field in danger, it's what this is saying is they expect police to stop. And, here's the thing, when they're encountering a violent person, they have to be able to, react like that. And there's all these pundits who can look at these situations and say they should have done this, they should have done that, as they, sit up on their podium and criticize people who go out there and risk their lives every day to try to protect us all. And so they build in this legislation, and all that does is make us in our communities less safe, because it takes the police, it takes the ability of the police to enforce the law away from them, right? And we're seeing this all across the country. And it's making us less safe. It's destabilizing society. And the whole goal of that is for the citizens. They want the citizens to come to them and say, help, help, raise their hand, say, we want more authority so that they can create more laws to take away our freedoms. And it requires all law enforcement agencies to use officer-worn body cameras by 2025. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But we go on. Correctional reforms. Reforms the felony murder law, so the defendant or someone acting with them must have caused a death in order to be charged for a murder. So one example I can think is a problem there is if somebody hired a hitman to kill their spouse, say. This is saying that they would have to be required to have caused the death themselves. I think that's definitely a problem. Loosens mandatory minimum sentences and supervised release terms. So again, putting violent criminals on our streets and loosening requirements for them. Eliminates prison gerrymandering by counting inmates as living in their last known place of residence for the purpose of legislating redistricting. So there's some correctional forms that aren't going to make us safer. Let's scroll down a little bit and let's do, how does the SafeT Act change things? If you get down to that, Jason. So it says much of the confusion around the SafeT Act comes from the fact that it imposes multiple layers of standards for pretrial detention contained in 3 separate subsections of the pretrial release section of existing law. That makes it complicated to determine when a crime will or will not be eligible for detention. Furthermore, it requires prosecutors to prove a defendant poses a threat to a specific identifiable person to deny pretrial release. New Jersey, the only other state that has come close to successfully eliminating cashless bail statewide, does not place these stringent layers of standards on prosecutors. So we'll go on. Standard 1, release or recognizance. Under the SafeT Act, detention can only be imposed if the defendant poses a specific, real, and present threat to a person or has high likelihood of willful flight. The phrase specific, real, and present threat is not defined. And there is no case law that interprets the meaning of this phrase, though real and present threat is a standard used in jurisdiction outside of Illinois. Okay, so essentially, they're making it easier to let violent criminals go into society. And this includes violent crimes. So why would they do that? Why would you take a broad brush? Let's say, a lot of what I hear is that, oh, well, there's all these nonviolent crimes and drug possessions like marijuana where people are in jail for 25 years. And while that may be true, and I think that's something that we do need to reform, that we do need to address, especially since marijuana is legal in Illinois right now. Why would you decide to take a broad brush and just say, no cashless bail? Everybody, we're just going to level the playing field. That's infusing chaos into the system. If you're going to let violent criminals go, there's going to be a certain, recidivism of violent crime after those criminals get out. And we're going to liken this to the illegal immigrant problem as well, but we're going to go back to the recidivism of crime as well. So let's start with the next article, Jason, for the migrants accused in Oak Brook of Macy's theft released on electronic monitoring. All right, we just scroll down. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'll just point out so they can read along. So, Oak Brook, Illinois, charges have been filed against 2 Venezuelan migrants who allegedly stole over $1,700 from Oak Brook Macy's store Monday evening. Abel Barrios Estava and Rafael Mata Torres, both of Venezuela, currently staying in Chicago, have been charged with 1 count of burglary and 1 count of retail theft. So, okay, we've got a serious issue with the migrant crisis in Chicago right now. Later, we're going to talk about one particular warehouse where there's over 2,700 migrants staying here. There's tent cities. It's out of control. And now we see this problem leaking out into the suburbs, okay? Now, this is just, a robbery of a Macy's store, but what happens, after a certain period of time, while all these people are here and we have trouble feeding them, housing them, clothing them. I mean, I don't blame it on the migrants. I don't blame it on the migrants at all. I blame it on the policy. You know, our government is purposefully letting millions of illegal migrants cross our border. We know that that can be stopped. We lived through the Trump presidency. And for some reason, they're letting all these people come in. I mean, there's no way to vet them. We don't know where they're coming from. There's children coming across the border where we cannot identify whether the people bringing them across are their parents or not. We know that that's leading to a major crisis in human trafficking and child sexual trafficking, and we're just ignoring it. We're bringing them into these cities like Chicago and New York and other cities, and we're just saying stick them in a warehouse. And what is that going to lead to for the quality of life and the cost of living of people who live in this country, right? They're going to raise our taxes in order to pay for these people. If these people get sick or if they get injured, what are they going to do? They're going to go to a hospital, right? How are we going to pay for that? Our taxes are going to have to go up. And right now, if you haven't noticed, our economy isn't doing so well. They're printing money like crazy, and everything is getting more expensive. There aren't more jobs, so it's a crisis that is being caused intentionally. And we saw the SafeT Act is allowing criminals back on the street. What do you think they did with these criminals? They sent them back on the street with monitors, but they don't have any homes. How are they going to track them down? Are they going to use the resources of police departments to track these people down when they don't make their court date? And they're going to fall into a queue, obviously, because there's going to be so many issues of crime because there's no way we can take care of all these people. So this is complete chaos. I want to show another issue with cashless bail right in my backyard, actually. It's in between my sister's house and my house, about a mile, not even a mile away. And I'm going to read this article because it drives me nuts, and it's something that we're all going to have to worry about now that we have this insane cash bail system. So, Downers Grove man, already accused of taking secret videos of females, is now charged with exposing himself to 2 children. Matthew Morgan, 36, of the 0100 block of 4th Street, is charged with 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a child, according to a DuPage County State's Attorney Office news release. DuPage County Judge George Ford denied pretrial release for Morgan Friday. According to authorities, Glen Ellen police responded around 4 p.m. on September 6 to Sunset Park, 483 Fairview Avenue, for a report of a man who exposed his genitals and touched himself in front of 2 girls ages 9 and 11. The girls were walking home from school, and when they heard a male voice, then they turned around and saw a man standing about 10 feet away from them, according to authorities. He allegedly told the girls that one of them had something fall out of their backpack and into nearby bushes and was over there, which caused the girls to look in another direction. When the girls looked back, he was touching himself, according to authorities. Morgan was arrested Thursday. On October 6th, Morgan was charged with 3 counts of felony unauthorized video recording. He allegedly placed his phone underneath a 13-year-old girl's dress at a Starbucks in Hinsdale while pretending to tie his shoes. It also is alleged that he secretly recorded a woman using a changing room at Goodwill store in Downers Grove. Police allege that when he was arrested, there were about 260 videos on his phone of recordings of young females in stores. Those offenses didn't qualify for pretrial detention, so he was placed on electronic home monitoring and released from custody. People on electronic home monitoring can leave their homes twice a week to conduct essential activities, including shopping for groceries under state law. Morgan also was allowed to visit a therapist in Lombard. According to a petition for detention filed in the latest case, Glen Ellen police saw a notice about Morgan's arrest in Downers Grove and Hinsdale case. They checked the phone Downers Grove police had confiscated and had directions to Sunset Park, according to the petition. The petition alleges Morgan told police he was urinating. So, here's a perfect example right in my backyard, in the constituents that watch our show's backyard, of cashless bail in effect. So we have a pervert here who preys on little girls in public places and gets let out with electronic monitoring device. And obviously that didn't do a lot of good, did it? Because he exposed himself to young girls. Now, what if this guy was even more dangerous, which is certainly going to happen in other cases, especially now that we have an influx of migrants that we have no clue of their background. What happens when we don't know how violent this person is? What happens when the person doesn't have a violent background because they haven't been caught and they get let back out in society and they end up killing somebody or seriously hurting somebody? You know whose fault it is? It's the state of Illinois' fault. It's the Democrats' fault. It's the rhinos' fault because they are allowing this to happen. There are plenty of people out there who are well aware that this is insanity. And none of us want to live under this kind of regime. None of this is common sense. None of this is logical. Why do we put up with it? Because of corruption. I talked a little bit about the corruption in Illinois the other day in a report from IllinoisPolicy.org that showed that between the years of, I believe it was 2000 and 2017, corruption in Illinois cost the Illinois taxpayer $550 million a year, I believe it is, and during that time over $9 billion. And that's how we get these nonsensical policies, right? That's how we get this illogical policy. And it's not a joke. It's not funny. People are going to get hurt. People are going to die because we have corrupt politicians in the state of Illinois. And because they think they have control of the message, they think they have control of the media. And so they will ignore the people who are saying that this is wrong, that they are corrupt, that, you know, we shouldn't be putting people in danger like this, because they think they have control of the message. But we're here doing this podcast because we're showing that's not the truth anymore. The old paradigm is gone. The old paradigm of, you know, the Chicago, Windy City politics and it controlling the state is gone. Nobody supports the Republican Party in Illinois. As Alex Jones said, they're basically Democrats. And it's not because their politics is Democrat. It's because they don't even understand that the corruption has swayed the Overton window to the left, and they have just fallen into this, you know, go along to get along mentality. So that is an example of the damage that cashless bail is doing in Illinois. And this is just since September. These are just a couple of examples. There's plenty more that we can talk about. But this is the kind of stuff that we need to fight and that we need to talk about and spread the word more, because this shows that there's no reason or logic to any politics in Illinois. It's all corruption. It's all corruption, and it's putting people in danger. So we got to continue to talk about it and continue to fight it. All right. Yeah, we got to play commercial. Just want to remind everybody for the commercial, please like, share, subscribe. Let's help get this message out. And what do we got? A commercial from Illinois Freedom Alliance, Jason? thank you to Illinois Freedom Alliance. Reach out to that number or their email for further information. They are doing yeoman's work and fighting a good fight for Illinois. All right. So the next topic we're going to cover are the title of the show, Law Day Keeps the Freedom Away. We're going to talk about the 34 pages of new laws that are taking effect in Illinois. I mean, this is the example of communism, all right? Like, there are 34 pages of laws that are mostly unnecessary. And the sole purpose of this is to just legislate away your freedom. Or corruption, right? A channel for pay to play or to funnel money from one special interest to another. So, Jason, if you can pull up that State Line article, which is pretty good and gives a pretty good summary there. And we'll scroll down to just where it gives to the list. I'll just talk about some of these. So we'll start with the minimum wage. So here we go. Minimum wage for non-tip workers increases to $14. For tipped employees, it increases to $8.40. So I'm no economist, but minimum wage is, okay, first of all, Democrats always advocate for minimum wage, right? That's their big thing. And the push is, well, a livable wage for workers, right? What it actually does, it just puts constraints on small businesses. It prices out unskilled workers. It forces small businesses to pay a certain wage so they can't be as productive. They can't allocate resources accordingly. They can't, it costs them money based on what the government tells them they can pay workers. And who does that benefit? I'll tell you what benefits corporations. So Democrats have long been the party of saying that, corporations need to pay their fair share. Corporations need to pay their fair share. We need to increase taxes for corporations, yada, yada, yada. But what do they actually do? They keep boosting minimum wage, which helps corporations snuff out the competition from small businesses and keep the little guy down, because the small businesses can't pay unskilled workers, whatever they want. And then that prices them out of the market. Furthermore, we have this illegal immigration problem, right? So what do small businesses do to try to get along? They pay cash under the table to illegal immigrants because they're cheap, and they'll work for the unskilled wage that might have been possible for a legitimate small business to pay unskilled workers and allow them to work their way up in a company. But no, they can't do that. And then they have to compete against these other small businesses that are willing to break the rules and pay cash under the table to, say, illegal immigrants. So it's basic economics. Everybody, if you want to know the truth about minimum wage, follow Thomas Sowell, and we're going to see a video from him later on in the show, and he will explain even better than I can in much greater eloquence why laws like minimum wage are detrimental to a free society and the small business, and just helpful to big corporations and help them get power. I mean, who do you think lobbies for minimum wage? The Democrats say that they're trying to help out the worker here, but corporations are the one who lobby for minimum wage because it helps them price out the competition. It helps them keep the small business down. So that's just one. We'll go over a couple more here. I'm actually going to read some of these from the document, and we're going to share this website because it actually has a PDF document with all of these laws in detail. And so there's some on here, like there's this new elections omnibus bill. So in that bill, there's a study for vote by mail email. So they're going to fund a study for vote by mail email. I can't imagine there being any corruption from a vote by mail email program, right? I mean, that seems crazy for me to suggest that there would be corruption in a digital form of voting. I can't imagine how that can go wrong. Okay, what else we got? All right, here we go. Well, there's one bottle filling station. So they're legislating that all new water fountains in certain areas have to have bottle filling stations. It's just adding cost for no reason. This is what I'm talking about. Adding cost for no reason. You're going to legislate that water fountains have to have certain things on them. It's insanity. What else do we got here? Page 8. Let me go to page 8 here. Okay. We have the Equal Pay Act, Equal Pay Scale Act. So now they're forcing companies to post jobs with the amount of pay and the benefits for every job. So the government is forcing companies to post certain things about the jobs that they want to hire for. Again, communism. So one simple definition of communism is the state controls the means of production. When the state starts telling the businesses what they can and can't do, is that a partnership or is that authoritarianism? Okay, that's insane. It's insanity. What else we got here? Okay, this is a good one. Page 9 here, we have this is one of the worst. Paid Leave for All Workers Act. So I'm just going to read this one to you because it's hard to imagine that they can even do this. I don't think this is constitutional, but we'll go ahead. Creates the Paid Leave for All Workers Act. Requires employers to provide paid leave to employees for any purpose. Any purpose. Sets forth provisions regarding employers' responsibilities, unlawful employer practices, and other matters. Provides that an employee who works in this state is entitled to earn and use a minimum of 40 hours of paid leave during a 12-month period. Makes it unlawful for an employer to interfere with, restrain, deny, change scheduled work days or hours to avoid paid leave or discipline an employee for the exercise of any right under the Act. Authorizes the Department of Labor to administer and enforce the Act. Creates the Paid Leave for All Workers Act as a special fund in the state treasury. A special fund. I wonder who's going to pay for that fund. So there's a perfect example of communism right there. You're forcing business. Where do you think the businesses are going to get the money to enforce this? Does it come out of thin air? Do they start producing more and making more money all of a sudden because the government dictated that they have to pay their workers for leave? That's not how this works. That's not how freedom works. That's not how any of this works. But it is how communism works, and it is how authoritarianism works. And this is just an example of how Illinois is the laboratory for communism in America, right? That's where the Democrats are going. And places like Illinois, California, and New York are prime examples of communism coming to Illinois. This is communism. And we're going to read the 10 planks of communism so that after I read some of these laws, you can see how there's quite the parallel between the Communist Manifesto of Karl Marx and the legislation that's being foisted upon us in places like Illinois. How are we doing on time, Jason, for this segment? 8 minutes. Okay. I'll try to do it. So one other one I'll go with is the book ban bill, because it's something that Terry and I actually fought a congressman over. So the book ban bill, just to reiterate, the book ban bill, it talks about giving freedom to library systems to acquire materials without external limitation and be protected against attempts to ban, remove, or otherwise restrict access to books or other materials. Provides that the state librarian shall prescribe rules concerning the development of a written policy declaring the inherent authority of the public library or the library system to prohibit the practice of banning specific books or resources. Provides that in order to be eligible for state grants, a public library or library system shall develop a written statement prohibiting the practice of banning books within the public library or the library system. So, Let me read that one line again. Provides the state library shall prescribe rules concerning the development of a written policy declaring the inherent authority of the public library. Authority. Okay, let me summarize what I just read there. It's a mechanism for the state to propagandize. How, you might ask? Well, they are saying that we are going to put materials in your library like pornography, which they have done and are doing. And when the citizens who pay for the library say that we do not want these materials exposed to our children, the state now has the authority to tell you, too bad, we will propagandize how we see fit. So the book ban bill is bullshit. It's not a book ban bill. It is a license for propaganda for the state of Illinois, and particularly whoever the communist bureaucrat they put in power as the state librarian. And I'm sure that person is going to be, measured in their approach of what materials to put in the libraries, right? Because we've already seen that happen with the pornography books that have been in the school libraries and the public libraries. We've got drones as first responders. So drone police are going to be able to have drones over events now. Apparently they can't take pictures or what, but now, we see it. The eye in the sky is coming for all of us. Non-citizen police applicants. So I wonder if I should read this one. How much time we got, Jason? Okay, let me read a couple more, and I'll go for the non-citizen police. We got opioid responders in music venues. So that's how bad of a problem opioids are becoming. They're legislating that we have to have first responders specific to opioid addiction or events in music venues. Electric Vehicle Charging Act. So they're going to require electric vehicle charging stations at specific businesses. Equitable restrooms. So here comes the transgender fight. They're going to make businesses put equitable restrooms in their businesses. They're going to create a task force for the homelessness problem. So now so obviously that's going to have to be funded, right? And they just can't figure out why there's all these homeless people. So the government's got to take care of that problem, and we have to create another ministry of the homelessness problem. Well, I can tell you, we don't need that. One way would be to not make all this legislation that's hurting small businesses and the economy, and then thereby freeing up the market and allowing businesses to thrive and make more money and hire low-skilled workers. So that's just a natural economic solution to the problem. But no, we need a task force. We need a task force on the homelessness. The intellectuals are hard at work. We've got a state literacy plan, so that obviously that's going to go in conjunction with this communist book ban bill, and License to Read Act. So they're weaponizing the public schools and their communist agenda as well. No termination of utility bills, 90 degrees. So that one is basically like during heat waves or severe weather, they are legislating that utility companies can't shut off utilities if there's not. All that's okay. You know what that does, right? If the utility companies cannot shut off utilities for people who aren't paying their bills, how exactly are they going to make money? Well, let's see. They're going to have to raise prices for everybody. This is common sense. All right, I'm just going to go back to the non-citizen, because this one's absolutely ridiculous. Non-citizen police applicants. Provides that an individual who is not a citizen but is legally authorized to work in the United States under the federal law is authorized to apply for the position of police officer, subject to all requirements and limitations other than citizenship, to which other applicants are subject. So Now we are going to have illegal immigrants who can get a work permit. And gee, I wonder if they're going to loosen the restrictions on the work permits. One of the other laws is that the old temporary license that went to non-citizens or legal immigrants is now just going to be, they're just going to be given a standard driver's license, just like the rest of us. I wonder how that might tie into voting. So just to close the loop on this segment, folks, those are some examples, and we're going to post this article, which has a link to the PDF that describes all of these 34 pages of laws, so that you can see what's going on and what is actually happening in Illinois. And people just don't know. If it doesn't affect your approximate life, then people think nothing is happening. But I can assure you, this is a big machine society. And it's going to take a little while before, say, the Cashless Bail Act or some of these laws are going to be noticeable. But I'll tell you one thing, what's going to be immediately noticeable is the cost of everything is going to go up, and the state of the economy in Illinois is going to be terrible because all of this stuff costs money, all of it. And where do you think that money comes from? Our pockets. Illinois policy did another article showing that Illinois is the highest tax state in the union. And it's because of garbage like this. And most of it is corruption. So take a look at that article. Take a look at the PDF that shows the 34 pages of laws, and start paying attention, because we're losing our state to communists. That is exactly what they are. All right, so I want to close the loop on this segment by playing a video that kind of describes the migrant issue and everything that we've talked about thus far. You can see how that all comes together with the migrant issue, and how it all bleeds together, and how this is going to be a major problem with all these new laws and all the immigrant problem that we're having. So Jason, can you play the video of what's going on in downtown Chicago and how fed up people are getting with this issue down there? Yeah, that's it right there.
The borders have been open, and now we have all these people inundated here in Chicago, and these people are living tax-free of taxpayer dollars, and our own citizens are sleeping and don't have anywhere to go. I think it's a damn shame, and the American people and patriots across this country should be outraged, and we should be holding these Democrats accountable for the actions they've taken against this country and our American way of life. We need to get Donald Trump back into office, because under the Trump leadership, black people flourished. Trump was good for the black community as we know of it. We didn't have no wars. We wasn't begging nobody for nothing. We was well respected in the world, and now we're the laughing stock of the world. We have no morals and values, and the American people deserve better. We deserve a president like Donald Trump. And by the way, Democrats, as a pastor and a true man of God, it is my job to make sure that we get God-fearing people in office. You will not come to Chicago and you will not celebrate the things that you've done. Spit in the black community face. We will boycott that convention and let the Democratic Party know no longer are we going to sit back and watch you destroy our communities and destroy this country. God bless America.
How do you justify leaving the amount of people on the streets that are out here? And you building tents, warm tents, to house 2,000 illegals? I went from tent to tent. Some of these people are veterans. How do you justify people being homeless at this rate?
We're seeing increased taxes. We're struggling to pay our mortgages. We're struggling to pay our bills. And we have thousands of dollars every month, millions of dollars, $500 million this year to support foreign nationals. And that's coming out of our pocket. It's going to people from another country, from foreign nationals. Those countries have to take care of their people. We just don't have the resources. You know, it's nothing against them, but we just don't have it. You know, we're struggling. This is government oppression at its finest. As a veteran myself, I just talked to a veteran in this tent right here. You know, we're seeing people who have given their all to their country, and we just cast them out by the expressway with the trash. This is unconscionable. And it's unconstitutional. Meanwhile, we have to follow every law. We can't go over the speed limit without getting a ticket sent to our house, but people can violate federal law, and we come in and roll out the welcome mat, give them our home equity, give them our sales taxes. They get the best of our schools. Meanwhile, something like 90% of black children are not reading, writing, and doing math proficiency, but they do it all under the guise of this fake diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. We just need to start voting differently. We need to start pulling ourselves out of these government institutions, starting with the public school system. We need to move on from big government and from the city of Chicago's political machine.
Trump 2024?
Trump 2024.
This is taken away from American citizens, American children who are already struggling academically. You're gonna bring in a new group of children, a new group of people, take those resources away from Americans to accommodate this new group of people. That is gonna make the children gonna fall further behind. Unemployment is going through the roof. Poverty, crime. This is going to impact our communities across this city to the point to where violence, murder, robbery is going to spike. Not just with Americans, but also with these people coming here. 3,000 illegal immigrants are living in this factory, almost, a half a block long? And this is going to transcend into public housing. They keep saying that there will be no public housing for illegal immigrants. That's not true. So we pay to be homeless, basically, now as United States citizens. We're going to flip Chicago red. The Democratic Party is done in Chicago, and that's a fact. By summer, you think it's a lot of them coming in. You watch the uprising of red in Chicago. Right. And we say, President Trump, come here and we'll walk you all through this city, and you don't have to worry about a protest. We send a message to the Democratic Party, Trump 2024. Make no mistake about it. Trump 2024.
The borders have been open.
All right. So there you go. There you have it. A small city within a big city of illegal immigrants. And he said it perfectly. This is costing our kids. This is costing the future. I mean, how are we gonna take care of these people? This isn't gonna be good for these illegal immigrants. They don't know anybody. They have no connections. Most of them don't speak English, or a lot of them don't. And they're just going to stick them in a warehouse. And what? And what are they going to do? And who are they? Sure, many of them are looking for opportunity, as would I. Many of them are bad actors as well. And not just here, but all across the country. And we're not vetting them at all. So that with the crime problem and all the new legislation is going to destroy and cripple our economy. And it's just going to be bad for the future of our children. And we got to stop it. And you heard that guy. They have now turned, a deep blue area into a red area, an area that might vote for Trump. And why? Because the policies suck. And they're not to help anyone. That's tyranny. It's obvious. All right. So we're going to wrap up with our last segment. And I just want to talk about what's actually going on in this world. What's really happening is this is a fight of centralization of power, right? I mean, I'm sure many people heard that, the 1% got much richer during the pandemic. And now the gap between them and the rest of society is widened even further. Because during the pandemic, small businesses didn't have the opportunity to conduct their business. The government was being weaponized against them. But, Amazon and Walmart and Home Depot and all these major corporations, business as usual. And if there was any restrictions, of course, since they were big corporations, they could afford whatever to accommodate whatever restrictions there were, but not small businesses. So the point here is that whether this was contrived or not, the government had made it easier for the rich to get richer, and for the collusion between the government and corporate America to be deeper, and for the little guy to suffer. And and now we're seeing it with the immigration crisis. We're seeing it even more. And so you're seeing governments, constrict the freedoms of people all over the world, and especially here. And there's this thrust of a centralization for power, because people are waking up to the corruption in our government, in our national security state, and otherwise. You got the pharmaceutical companies colluding with the bureaucratic agencies. You have the FBI and the DOJ working with the social media companies during the election to try to throttle conservative opinions, and stories like the Hunter Biden laptop. So there's a centralization versus decentralization issue. The decentralization is the people that want freedom, that want to protect their rights, the Bill of Rights. So back when I was working with this Republican consulting firm, I was having an argument about the Matt Gaetz fight with Kevin McCarthy when he was trying to become Speaker of the House. And this kid was just out of college, good kid, smart kid, and he was, I hate this guy. Team, we have to come together as Republicans. Blah 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 blah. I heard this kind of crap from the local Republicans I was working with too, and it's just a misunderstanding of what's actually going on. So, what Matt Gaetz advocated for is to devolve centralized power in the House and have accountability for spending, because right now all we do is print money, and people get caught up in the team red, team blue thing too often. And Terry and I have obviously shown in Illinois, particularly in our area in DuPage County, that the team red thing doesn't go a long way when they're colluding with Democrats and giving money to Democrats, including radical Soros-funded district attorneys like Kim Foxx. I'm not on that team red. Why? We have to be about policy. We have to be conservative. We have to uphold conservative values, right? And for me, the main conservative values are freedom, the principles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So that's what Gaetz trying to say. And I'm gonna play a video from Tim Pool's Timcast, where Gaetz explains this. A lot of people think he's, brash and, off-putting. But in this video, you'll see him explain the issue very well, and why he's more for a freedom movement, not about, causing chaos or, dividing people. So if we could start at 2:25, Jason.
Look, we believed that Washington was broken. The normal system of selecting leadership in both parties is based on the redistribution of lobbyist and special interest money. Like, if you want to be the leader of your party, you basically have to raise and redistribute north of $100 million. And Kevin McCarthy was so good at that, he raised and distributed about $500 million over the course of the last election cycle. And so it creates a covenant that's not really built on trust or merit or vision, but trading money for political support. And we wanted to send a shock to that DC cartel system and to say, no, guess what? There's going to have to be a different way you get there. And the concessions we sought principally fell into like three buckets. Policy. We wanted specific bills coming to the floor. We wanted commitments on when they would come to the floor. We wanted adherence to specific spending levels with a budget resolution. And the organizing principle of our policy goals was really to make sure that we would never again get an omnibus bill like we had to vote on. That's just a total joke of a way of governing. Like, how can we sit here and honestly say that bills that are thousands of pages long, that spend $1.7 trillion, and that you get 48 hours before having to cast a vote is really legislating. It's not. It devalues each individual member, and it's insulting to our constituents to suggest that we even know what the hell we're doing when that's the way we run the railroad. So we had policy concessions. Second was procedure. You know, having those 72 hours to read the bill, having open amendments. Like the youngest member of Congress was not yet born the last time the appropriations process went through regular order. And that just means like we should vote on the defense stuff separately and then vote on like the education stuff and then the health and human services stuff, and that it doesn't just all get mushed together so somebody can vote for a bunch of bullshit that you wouldn't otherwise approve and then say, well, I had to vote for it to fund our troops, right? That's the game. That's what the cartel builds, and lobbyists make $1 gazillion off of that. The final leg of the stool is personnel. Like, in order to enforce the deal that we got, we wanted specific people on specific committees in specific leadership posts. And, you know, what's the saying? You rob the banks because that's where the money's at. Well, we wanted far more representation on the Appropriations Committee because that's where the money is. And a lot of Americans don't know what the Rules Committee is or why that's important, but it totally governs what we get to vote on and what we don't get to vote on. And so we demanded specific people and specific representation on the Rules Committee. I think we're going to be in a lot stronger position as a result. Like the critique, I heard a few critiques during this process. One is like, this was chaos. You showed the country, you know, how rough and tumble this is. And, you know, you should have done this behind closed doors. To hell with that, man. Behind closed doors is where the American people have been getting screwed. And so I wanted to level my complaint on the House floor specifically. I wanted to cite the people that I was objecting to and their ascension to leadership. And so that didn't mind. And then like, it's like, oh no, you burned your whole first week. There are days in Congress where the only thing we vote on is the renaming of one post office. There are days in Congress where the only thing we vote on are the rules that govern the next vote. And we take 6 weeks off every year for summer vacation where we do absolutely nothing. So to take 4 days to say, this is the policy, this is the procedure, this is the personnel that is going to drive the Republican team going forward seems like the best use of time since I've been there. So that was the general construct.
Right. I mean, that's all right. So that was in Matt Gaetz' words. So that's a great clip because he explains, you know, how Washington works. It's pay for play. It's lobbyists are writing bills. What he's saying is like, no, we should have single spending bills. Like what they do is they say, oh, we're funding the military, we're pro-military, or we're funding veterans. But then they throw a bunch of pork in it, and there are 1,000 pages in these bills, and they're not written by legislatures. They're written by lobbyists, and they cost $1 trillion, like he said. And what he's saying is we have to control that. We have to create rules to checks and balances, right? I mean, just so for the economic part of this, and I wrote some of this down because I didn't want to screw it up, but these are my thoughts on it. Inflation is a tax on the future. It's about supply and demand. So when supply's high, the price is cheap. When demand is high, price is high because of the cost of production, right? Same thing with money. When you inject more money into the system in order to artificially inflate demand, the result is more expensive goods and services because there's not an increase in supply, production, or workers based on downward market pressures. Therefore, all the government is doing by printing money and increasing debt is devaluing the dollar. So, folks, if you want to know the singular reason why the U.S. has the highest quality of living, it is most certainly the international hegemony of the U.S. dollar. That's it. So when that goes, so goes the U.S. influence across the globe. And this is why Matt Gaetz is so bullish on the spending, is because we're printing ourselves into insignificance, and all that is corruption, right? It's special interest and corporate interest and lobbyists who write these bills to pay for this or pay for that through 1,000-page legislation, and it's destroying our country. And so his approach really was more pragmatic than anything, saying we have got to stop the illogical printing of money and the way that laws are created in Congress. So there's just one more clip I want to play for you from that clip, not that one, from the Matt Gaetz one at 7:20. If you go to 7:20 of the, that's okay. That's all right. It should be in the Slack. And we're just gonna, and the important, he's gonna talk about the uniparty, and he lays it out pretty simply, and
rely on to.
There you go.
Resource our campaigns. And I mean, that's a pretty astonishing argument, but it at least has a logical construct. And then, there are people who fear disrupting the system. They think, look, I got here to Congress. I've got a staff that tells me I'm always losing weight and that my jokes are funny. Like, I go home and I'm the big cheese at the Rotary Club. And like, to every extent that I can have calm waters, the better. And anything that creates turbulence, I oppose. And that's actually a pretty big swath of the Republican conference and the Democrat conference. That is how the uniparty gets to groupthink.
Yeah.
And like, I hear all this time these geriatric senators talking about like, oh, the importance of these great bipartisan achievements. But so often in my life, like, the greatest moments of unity have been the worst for the people. There's a shit ton of unity to pass the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
We never thought it was actually going to be used against patriots. We thought it was going to be used against, Arabs in faraway lands. There was a whole lot of unity over the Iraq War. Everybody was for that. There was a ton of unity for the COVID lockdowns. There was a ton of unity for just printing money and sending it to people that weren't working. And so, like, whenever they're the bills that are like the major bills that have 95% support, that's when you need to be most worried at times.
You fear retaliation?
No, because we built the tools in that would allow us to have the accountability. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is going to go down in history as the last of the imperial speakers that centralized power and that then, only doled out to members. Oh, well, you can go rename a post office. You can go create a task force. Meanwhile, the macroeconomic decisions, the major cultural and policy decisions, all get centralized in the speaker's office, where a lot of the staff all went to like Northeastern schools and are afraid of things like fried food and guns and, people who enjoy those things, right? And Paul Ryan gave an interview on CNN yesterday that was really telling, where he even confessed, like, I had too much power as speaker. Like, way too many of those decisions were made without the people who had spent years analyzing policies, seeing which programs had varying levels of efficacy. And so while, McCarthy, I think to his credit, at the end of the day, was willing to devolve a lot of that power, we reinstituted the one-member motion to vacate the chair. So for any reason, at any time, any member can go to the floor and call for a vote and to remove the Speaker of the House. And if 218 people vote for that motion, then the Speaker is gone. Now, I don't want to use that. I don't intend to use that. But I think having it on the books is healthy for the institution so that there isn't fear of retaliation for doing what's right.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I think he laid it out pretty well there, because a lot of the things that I would hear in Illinois, particularly like across the aisle, we have to work with Democrats. And what he was explaining there was like, well, some of the worst policy comes from unity, so to speak. The Patriot Act, Iraq War, COVID measures, right? So the other thing that he talks about is devolving the power of the speaker, decentralizing. This is what he's talking about here, which is why America is so great. Checks and balances on power. This is exactly what the founders wanted. This is why the Constitution is such a beautiful document, because it's not the Bill of Rights that makes us the most free country in the world. And let's play the Scalia clip. We don't have to play all of it, but I just want to. So Antonin Scalia is one of my favorite legal philosophers. He was a former Supreme Court justice who passed away a few years ago. But he was very eloquent in how he described the nature of the legal system in this country and the Constitution. And so, on that note of checks and balances, I want to just let you hear from somebody who is artistic in describing how great our country is and why.
Committee where I started this pilgrimage. I am going to get even more fundamental than my good friend and colleague. Like him, I speak to students, especially law students, but also college students and even high school students, quite frequently about the Constitution, because I feel that we're not teaching it very well. I speak to law students from the best law schools, people presumably especially interested in the law, and I ask them, how many of you have read the Federalist Papers? And, well, a lot of hands will go out. No, not just number 48 and the big ones. How many of you have read the Federalist Papers, cover to cover? Never more than about 5%. And that is very sad. I mean, especially if you're interested in the Constitution. Here's a document that says what the framers of it thought they were doing. It's such a profound exposition of political science that it is studied in political science courses in Europe. And yet we have raised a generation of Americans who are not familiar with it. So when I speak to these groups, the first point I make, and I think it's even a little more fundamental than the one that Stephen has just put forward, I ask them, what do you think is the reason that America is such a free country? What is it in our Constitution that makes us what we are? And I guarantee you that the response I will get, and you will get this from almost any American, including the woman that he was talking to at the supermarket, the answer would be freedom of speech, freedom of the press, no unreasonable searches and seizures, no quartering of troops in hope, those marvelous provisions of the Bill of Rights. But then I tell them, if you think that a Bill of Rights is what sets us apart, you're crazy. Every banana republic in the world has a Bill of Rights. Every president for life has a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights of the former evil empire, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was much better than ours. I mean it literally. It was much better. We guarantee freedom of speech and of the press. Big deal. They guaranteed freedom of the speech, of the press, of street demonstrations and protests, and anyone who is caught trying to suppress criticism of the government will be called to account. Whoa, that is wonderful stuff. Of course, just words on paper. What our framers would have called a parchment guarantee. And the reason is that the real constitution of the Soviet Union, you think of the word constitution, it doesn't mean a bill, it means structure. Say a person has a sound constitution, has a sound structure. The real constitution of the Soviet Union, which is what our framers debated that whole summer in Philadelphia in 1787. They didn't talk about the Bill of Rights. That was an afterthought, wasn't it? That constitution of the Soviet Union did not prevent the centralization of power in one person or in one party. And when that happens, the game is over. The Bill of Rights is just what our framers would call a parchment guarantee. So the real key to the distinctiveness of America is the structure of our government. One part of it, of course, is the independence of the judiciary. But there's a lot more. There are very few countries in the world, for example, that have a bicameral legislature. Oh, England has a House of Lords for the time being, but the House of Lords has no substantial power. They can just make the Commons pass a bill a second time. France has a Senate, it's honorific. Italy has a Senate, it's honorific. Very few countries have two separate bodies in the legislature equally powerful. That's a lot of trouble, as you gentlemen doubtless know, to get the same language through two different bodies elected in a different fashion. Very few countries in the world have a separately elected chief executive. Sometimes I go to Europe to talk about separation of powers. And when I get there, I find that all I'm talking about is independence of the judiciary. Because the Europeans don't even try to divide the two political powers, the two political branches, the legislature and the chief executive. In all of the parliamentary countries, the chief executive is the creature of the legislature. There's never any disagreement between them and the prime minister, as there is sometimes between you and the president. When there's a disagreement, they just kick him out.
All right, so that was the ever eloquent Antonin Scalia. He's one of my favorite philosophers. I call him a philosopher in general because the way that he describes the beauty of our Constitution and the structure of our government, I think, is artistic rather than analytical, so or logical. And you know, look, what he explains so eloquently is that it's not the Bill of Rights, it's not the Parchment Guarantee, it's checks and balances. It's that bicameral legislature. It's that separation of the executive branch from the parliamentary structure. And that's our way out of this mess that we're in right now, right? Freedom. The only way we get freedom is the check and balance power, because the lust for power is something that will never leave human nature. It's always going to be there. And it's always a problem for freedom. But the one thing that we can do is we can follow the example of the founders of this country who understood that keenly. And they understood the metaphysical property of human freedom, and that the only thing that restricts human freedom is humanity itself, and that lust for power, and the seven deadly sins, greed and envy and everything else. But what we can do is we can create law. We can create government that checks and balances itself so that we can be free, so that government is informed and directed by the people. And that was the idea the founders had. And over 200 plus years, special interest and corrupt people have slowly chipped away at that. And we find ourselves where we are at now, with ministries or departments and bureaucracies who have the power of legislation, like the library systems now in Illinois. But what we can realize is our mistakes, and we can vote for people who are for freedom, and we can inform them that we need more checks and balances. We can use AI in the correct way. We could use AI to say, look, here's the problem. We have corruption. It's destroying the freedom of people. How can we use this new technology to ensure that we check and balance our way out of this issue? And the bottom line is we need to be free, because it's inherently evil. Coercion is inherently evil. No matter how you try to slice it or convince anybody, at the end of the day, coercion is the point of a gun from the government. And we need to be free to make mistakes, because there are no solutions. And I'm gonna play one more video and let one of the more brilliant philosophers of the 20th century, someone who I admire greatly, Thomas Sowell, explain that in about 1 minute and 22 seconds.
What is the liberal premise?
I guess the Rousseau notion, that man is born free but is everywhere in chains, that the real problem with the world is that the institutions are wrong. If the institutions were right, then there was nothing in human nature that would cause us to be unhappy. It's the fact that we have the wrong institution.
What is the conservative premise?
That man is flawed from day one, and that there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And whatever you do to deal with one of man's flaws, it creates another problem. but that you try to get the best trade-off you can get, and that's all you can hope for. I've often said there are three questions that I think would destroy most of the arguments on the left. And the first is, compared to what? The second is, at what cost? And the third is, what hard evidence do you have? Now, there are very few ideas on the left that can pass all three of those kinds of things.
Can conservative ideas pass those?
Yes, I think so, because they don't assume that there is a solution out there. You know, Adam Smith didn't believe that either the government or the market could solve all problems, that you have to be able to simply tolerate certain things. And the idea to the left of tolerating any evil, you know, that they want to stamp out the last vestige of segregation. Really? At what price? At what price?
Okay, so again, a brilliant philosopher who could explain it far better and more eloquent than I can, but there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. So we have to have freedom. And we have to have the ability to explore those trade-offs. I think that's what somebody like Elon Musk is doing, right? You know, when he sits in front of an audience and they ask him about, you know, being blackmailed with advertising, and he says, "F you." I hope that's clear. If you try to blackmail me with money, F you. Because people should have the right to speak freely. So, I think I'm an optimist. I'm sanguine about the future. I think that people are waking up to this centralization effort by the people and with all the money and the power. And I think people are seeing that it's corrupt and it's inherently evil. And I think that we're at war. We're at war for our country, and we're at war all over the world against these special interests, this corporate collusion with governments. And you look at a place like Argentina with this new president, Javier Milei, who's a populist, pro-freedom president. He's just slashing government institutions all over the place. That's the right move. Slash taxes, slash government institutions. We don't need Big Brother controlling our lives. We should use technology like AI and other technologies to ensure that we become more free, that people have more opportunity to innovate and invent things. When we close markets to only special interests or to, like, you know, a special club, then how is that a good way to innovate? You're shutting out a whole segment of the population. You're shutting a whole segment of creativity. As Elon Musk has said, this is a death cult. And so that's what Terry and I are trying to do is promote freedom. You know, we started this fight trying to fight for our kids, right? Trying to fight against the propaganda in our schools and what they were doing during COVID. And, you know, I'm fighting for that at the lowest possible level of this first brick of the political process in our township organization. Even in that organization, they want to centralize power. They were so mad that we got a hold of email lists because only they could dictate the communications to the organization. Well, I want to democratize communication within the organization. I want people to be able to be on, say, a software application where everybody can communicate, where we can create topics for each interest that we want to advocate for, where everybody can be involved in candidate recruitment and community engagement. We're stagnant right now. But that is where the fight starts. That's where grassroots starts, is in your local township organizations. It's getting involved in your community. You know, it's having the guts to speak out against things you disagree with, and also speaking to people about solutions. So that's what we're trying to do. And I want to help give people a voice, and I want to help fight for the decentralization movement, because we are behind enemy lines here in Illinois, as you can see with the 34 pages of legislation. And that sucks, and it's gonna help destroy our state. But I mean, I think it always has to get worse before it gets better because people have to wake up to things. And I think there's a lot of us that do have the will to fight. They just need somebody to stand up and be the spearhead. And people like Terry Newsom are doing that. I'm trying to follow his lead in that space, and he will be out at America Fest, shaking a lot of hands, talking to a lot of important people, and we'll show you a lot of that content. So appreciate you joining us tonight, and stay with us. We'll be posting more content of Terry out doing some interviews and talking about what's going on here in Illinois. So like, share, subscribe, and again, I thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Every time we pull up, you see stars, you see stripes, you see flags on the cars and the trucks and the bikes. Every time we pull up, we go hard, we outside, we got flags on our arms that are tatted there for life. Every time we pull up, we don't care if you're mad, we cherish this land, the haters can't get buried in rags. They set fire to old glory, turning fabric to ash. But every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is a man.